I want you to listen to Son and Daughter Revisited on Crown Jewels. Coming up next on the PLD Project Network. Welcome back to the PLD Projects Network. I'm your host, PLD, and this is Crown Jewels, the podcast where I take you on a journey through the entirety of the Queen catalog, song by song, chronologically. And we go through every version of every song that's available so that we can figure out which is the titular crown jewel of the said song that we can slide into our ultimate playlists. And of course, we have been on this journey for quite a while now. We did take a step back recently due to the re-release of Queen's original album in box set format in December of 2024. That allowed us to stop the Flash Gordon soundtrack, which is where we were chronologically in 1980, to slide back to 1973 because we had new versions to put up against the original Crown Jewel winners. This week we are still continuing that journey. We are almost done. We have a couple of tracks left from the box set to revisit. This week, Son and Daughter, the bluesy rocker from Brian May. If you remember last time, the previous Crown Jewel winner, the previous titular winner, is Live at the Rainbow March from 1974. And we had a couple other ones in there, which we'll get into shortly enough. Now, if this is your first time here, besides the whole hit the like, hit the subscribe, all that good jazz, I usually give you notes, quotes, history of the song, all that jazz before we listen to versions and figure out which one we like best. But in this case, throughout the entirety of the revisiting era, I'm not going to do it again. Son and Daughter, there's an original episode you can go back and listen to if you want notes and quotes and all that good stuff. Here we're going to basically just listen to the new versions of the tracks from the box set to see if where they slide into our rankings. And we do have three new versions to listen to. We have the 2024 mix, the instrumental version, and Trident takes 1 and 2 with guide vocal. Now, if you look how you're going to listen to this, if you look below in the show notes, you'll see a Google Doc with links to YouTube versions, so you too can listen to these before I talk about it. So when it comes to time, I'm going to tell you to pause me, go click on those links, listen to what version I'm going to talk about. You come back and I tell you all about it. Now, in that Google Doc, I do have 2 additional tracks, well, technically 4 additional tracks, but the 2 versions in there that are not going to be discussed too much will be the winner of the previous Crown Jewel, the Live at the Rainbow March from 1974, and also the original album version, the remastered from 2011 version, to compare directly with the 2024 mix. Now, what's so special about the 2024 mix? Well, it wasn't just a remastering. If you've heard this before, I'm sorry, but I'm going to say it again to anybody who's new. The 2024 Queen 1 Collector's Edition box set was a chance for Brian May and Roger Taylor to revisit the original album, which the sound was never up to their liking. This was the time when the band was just starting out. They were given like dregs of hours. They could come in for 4 hours at a time in the middle of the night when the studio wasn't already in session at that point. They had to use the Trident setup, this Trident dead sound, which was popular at the time, but for the drums especially, Roger hated them and always wanted to punch up the drum sound. Brian didn't like the guitar sound very much either, to be completely honest. So this was a chance from the ground up to really take charge, and it didn't add new things, but they were able to remix with current technology to get it closer to how they originally wanted it to sound. And it's been a pretty good success so far. I mean, there's some detractors, obviously some detractors who have said that it sounds a little too modern now. I disagree. Well, it's not necessarily that I disagree. It's just that I don't know if they're hearing what they think they're hearing. I kind of think sometimes that just hearing something different makes it sound more modern in a way, perhaps. But, I don't want to knock it. If you don't like it, I get it. But I'm not here to tell you whether you like it, whether to like it or not. That's up to you to decide. I'm just here to discuss the differences and whether I think it fits to be the crown jewel. Like I said, 3 versions to listen to. The 2024 mix will be the first one we listen to. So when I tell you to pause in just a second, I'm going to have you pause it, go listen to both the album 2011 remastering version and the 2024 mixes that we have in comparison, and then come back and I will talk about it. Do it now. See you soon. All right, there you have it. Son and Daughter Punched Up for 2024. This was not my favorite song on the album to begin with, so I want to make that crystal clear. So, where I'm coming from, your miles may vary. A lot of people do love this one. It is one of their heavier tracks on the album. It's not that I don't like heavy tracks, I just felt this one was a little plodding for me, a little bit too I don't know, standard at sometimes for what I like out of Queen, but at the same time, it's still very good. I think I rated it a 5.5 initially. Yes, 5.5 out of 11, because we always turn things up to 11 here on PLD projects. But 5.5 was what I originally rated it. So it's interesting to hear this version for me, being that this wasn't one of my favorites. It's probably why it is why I rated the Rainbow March 1974 as the best version. That does add a little bit of that Brian May guitar solo, which I do like, which is what you probably noticed on the Google Doc. If you look at the Rainbow March 74, it's 3 different YouTube videos because they split it up between the Son and Daughter, Brian's guitar solo, and Son and Daughter reprise. But I consider that one track. Basically, Brian did a guitar solo in the middle of the track, which is why I put those 3 together as one. But let's talk about the album version versus the 2024 mix. Like most of the 2024 mixes, or pretty much all the 2024 mixes, you really can hear a lot more what's going on. The original mix was just very muddy. Instruments kind of blended together a lot. The intensity could be a little bit lost, and maybe that's why it was a little more plodding to me, because I gotta admit, this version, the 2024 mix, was much more pleasant to my ears, and had a much more intense, aggressive feel to it. That which kind of got buried a little bit in the 1973, even with the mix, even with the 2011 remastering of it. Specific care is taken on Brian's lead guitars during the beginning of verses. I could feel this kind of really specific track kind of stand out, and not in a bad way, not that it wasn't blending, but I could really just hear the intensity of those single notes here and there as he added some texture to the song, and it really kind of made it a big deal. It kind of made that aggressive sound even more aggressive. There's some extra echo that's added on Freddie's voice. Again, it kind of just adds this push intensity to it. I don't think has changed about it. I know that's been kind of a thing in the Queen world where they've done some pitch correction here and there, which I'm against the pitch correction, although I'm not as zealous as some fans out there who are very, very angry about touching Freddie's voice, which I get. I totally understand that idea. I'd rather hear Freddie even with his slight warbles. That's part of his rich, warm sound. But to me, maybe because I'm an old man, I don't tend to hear, unless it's pointed out to me, I tend not to hear it when it's changed as much. When it's pointed out to me, I can go, okay, yeah, I can see that a little bit. I don't notice much about that here. I more notice the instrumentals being patched up and pushed up, which is a good thing. Oh my God, Ryder's drums, thunderous sounding, especially by the end. It's really kind of aggressive throughout, but the drums really kind of power that intensity. It's really, really great moments that are kind of patched up here and there, and it makes for a much cleaner, crisper, but yet aggressive sounding track. So I do like this version quite a bit. 2024 mix has made me open up my ears to different things I might have missed, not specifically like parts of the song, but just the song as a whole really kind of changes in my estimation. So yeah, I like this version a lot. I'm happy we got this one. So, all right, next up we got the instrumental version. If you've listened to me enough, you know that a lot of times for these Queen re-releases, or News of the World, A Miracle, which we haven't even gotten to Miracle yet in the podcast here, but in News of the World they did the same thing. They release a disc of basically the album, just instrumental or backing track versions. Sometimes they're differently. There's like sometimes they have the backing vocals, sometimes not. This one was the instrumental version, which is very interesting to hear, especially because there's a lot of breaks in the stuff. Like there's some a cappella vocals, which obviously are not present. But let's see, what do you think? Click on that link below in the Google Doc, and then we'll come back and I will talk about it. Welcome back, everybody. This podcast really becomes a tale of two worlds. The crux of the podcast has always been, like I said previously, we're finding the best version for the ultimate playlist, the crown jewel version. What's the best version of the song available? However, there's a secondary purpose in there, like for the notes and the quotes. It's just listening to the versions, listening to different tracks and seeing what has happened, what has partaken. And a lot of times there are versions that in no way would ever be a crown jewel version, but in no way does it mean it's not worth listening to, because that's what I want to make very clear. And most of the time, the instrumentals fall into that position. I don't think I've had an instrumental yet that has become the crown jewel version, because quite frankly, you have voices like Freddie and Roger and Brian. You want to hear the vocal tracks on there. I mean, do they hold up as instrumentals? Absolutely. But the best version of the track is going to be the one with the vocals. And that holds true here. I wouldn't put this one on the top of the list, but it is very cool to listen to, especially given all the breaks. You kind of have those moments where the backing vocals would have been there, or the harmony vocals would have been there, and you have this kind of break in the tension. So when the instruments kick back in, it just kind of feels even more harder, more powerful, more like that gives you that pause of a breath of fresh air, and then bam, it comes back in, really hard knocking. So yeah, it's interesting to hear them for sure, and I'm glad we get a chance to hear them and talk about them. I'm glad you get a chance to listen to them. But if you're like me, I don't think I could ever put this as a top tier version of the song. I'm going to listen to something with Freddie singing it, with Ryan and Roger doing those harmonies. But it is a very good version. It's a very good version for sure, and it's a very interesting listen. So it's definitely something I like to take a listen to every once in a while. But when it comes down to it, if I'm going to listen to the best one, it's not going to be the instrumental version. It's also most likely not going to be our next version. But I'm going to listen to it anyway because we listen to every single version. Next up, we got the Trident takes 1 and 2 with guide vocal. That is one track. There's a beginning. Take 1 gets kind of halted, stopped, and then it goes on to take 2 and does feature Freddie doing a guide vocal. So I'll talk about that more after you listen to it. So come back soon.
That wasn't a good one.
Okay.
And welcome back, and that's very much another example of what I was just talking about. Trident takes 1 and 2 with guide vocal. A guide vocal, if you don't know, is just basically the lead singer or a singer laying down a vocal track to keep the instruments in line. It's for the instruments to kind of follow along with. It's never meant to be a final vocal. Freddie's not really, I would say, he's trying his best here, although when it's really bad, he lets you know. That's why take 1 is a false start before they go to the rest of it. There's no real backing vocals here. In fact, the second verse is completely different lyrically, and I'm not sure if it's Freddie forgetting the lyrics at this point or not caring about the lyrics too much, or if they were in fact different lyrics at the time, because it is, like I said, it is takes 1 and 2, so it could be that the lyrics weren't finished yet, potentially. Either way, it's completely different to what the original or the album version would be, which makes it an interesting listen to for sure. The most interesting part of the take, though, is the extended ending, as we would come to know later on in the BBC versions and the live versions, including the titular Crown Jewel version that we chose from the Rainbow concert in March of 1974. Son and daughter housed Brian May's guitar solo, which would become Brighton Rock. The Brighton Rock track itself released on the Sheer Heart Attack album a few years later, or actually a year later, but the third Queen album. That would be the eventual vehicle for Brian's guitar solo for the rest of his career. But before Brighton Rock, he would have housed it in Son and Daughter, especially in the concerts. And it just goes to show, this take shows that that was always the case. Obviously, they cut it down to 3 minutes for the album version. They took Brian May's extended guitar solo out. But the embryonic version is here. We don't hear the guitar solo, but we kind of hear the little bit and pieces of where it was going to break into the guitar solo. A live version is where Brian would have taken into his extended solo. Perhaps the idea was to do it as they were going to do it live and house the guitar solo, and they decided later on to just cut it down and not showcase Brian in that way on this album, at least. It's not quite clear. Perhaps we'll find a different version later on that has even more extended. I doubt at this point, because I don't think we're going to get anything new out of this. I think this is it. This is the extended vault we're going to get from this album for sure. But it's definitely interesting to hear. We know that it does come through later on in the concert versions, and the album version, it's not there. So it makes it for a very intriguing listen. Again, though, going back to what I said previously, is it a Crown Jewel version? Absolutely not. Instrumentally, closer. Actually closer, kind of some cool stuff. With Freddie phoning it in and not doing a whole lot with it, definitely not going to be a Crown Jewel version. But I'm glad we have it. I'm glad we can talk about it. I'm glad you can listen to it. So there you have it. And that's all the listening we're going to do today. This is where in the podcast I jump to rating the track on a scale of 1 to 11, because we always turn things up to here, PLD Projects to 11. I said before it was a 5.5. The new mix actually does kick it up a notch for me. It's been rare this time. Most of the 2024 mixes I've liked better, but they really haven't changed my view on where the track falls on the rating scales. This one I'm going to bump up a whole point to 6.5. This has definitely opened my ears up and maybe listen to this in a new fashion. Now, more importantly for the revisiting era, we get to see where the new versions slide into our ultimate ranking of all the different versions previously listed. I'll go back to the original rankings from the least crown jewel to the biggest crown jewel. I gotta find a better way to say that because it's not like the least crown jewel. I guess it's the smallest. It'd be one of those really small gems, whereas the winner is that big centerpiece kind of jewel. Either way, lowest to highest, we had the Live at Hammersmith 1975. Realizing that was really just a snippet. He basically just played the band played Brighton Rock at Brian's guitar solo, and at the end they throw a snippet of Son and Daughter in. So it's not really bad. Nothing really bad about it. It just happens to be that it's just a 1 minute version of the song. So as far as crown jewels go, it's right at the bottom there. Next up from that, we had the Australian Edit, which is a single version that basically cut the word shit out, according with another line or two. From there, we had the Live in Golders Green, 1973. That was released on the BBC album. We had the album version come in next. From there, the BBC 1973, December of 1973, that session. We had Live at the Rainbow, November 1974. We had the BBC session from July of 1973, and again, the titular crown jewel was Rainbow, Live at the Rainbow, March of 1974. Of course, both the March and November concerts released on the Rainbow box set. So where do the new versions slide in? Well, okay, I'm going to put Hammersmith 1975 right back on the bottom, because again, a minute-long snippet is not going to be anywhere near the top. It's going to be the least crown jewel always. From there, I'll put the backing track, because even without the vocals, at least it's the full version of the song, and we get the full growly Brian guitar and Ryder drums. It's a great version. That's where I put it over Hammersmith 1975. From there, we got the Australian Edit. Don't edit my boys. The band never does. Very rarely does the band have a good single edits, I'm not going to lie. And when they're done for this case particularly, and all they do is basically just take lines out of the song, it just bugs the hell out of me. So put that down there for sure. In fact, I actually might listen to the backing track over Australian Edit, but I'm not going to quibble over that, to be honest with you. Over there, next up, we got the Trident Takes 1 and 2 with the guide vocal. I will listen to that over the Australian Edit. I do think that's a better version with the extended instrumental, so I'll take that for sure. From there, Golders Green, the album version, BBC 1973 December, Rainbow November of 1974, BBC July of 1973, which means, yes, the 2024 mix really kicked the album version behind. Its ass is grass. And does it have what it takes to overtake Rainbow of March 1974? It's going to fall just short, my friends. It's going to fall just short. I'm going to put the 2024 mix next, and then still champion, still crown jewel, is that Live in the Rainbow, March of 1974, the full-on version, including Brian's extended guitar solo. It's a great rock and roll track. It's a great live rock and roll track, and the extra added guitar solo really adds to my listening pleasure, to be completely honest. So, 2024 mix, you had a valiant run, a valiant take at the championship here at WrestleMania, as it were, but you fall just a little short. All right. And that's going to do it for us this week, folks. Got a few more weeks of the Queen 1 Collector's Edition Revisiting Era. Next week is Jesus, which actually has 5 versions to listen to. 2024 mix, the Day Lane Lay Demo 2024 mix, a Day Lane Lay Take 2 with guide vocal, a backing track, and most importantly, Live at Imperial College from August 23, 1970. That's right, pre-John Deacon, the only official recording with not having John Deacon on the bass. We have Barry Mitchell, one of the band's original bass players, on the bass, so it's very much an interesting version to listen to for sure. After that, coming up, we do have Seven Seas of Rye with the Ellipsis. That's the original 1973 version, not the hit single from Queen 2 that you guys know, more of, I should say. We have Hangman, which is an official release of a live version on the box set. And finally, I'm a Man, which is also released from that 1970 concert. A cover of the Bo Diddley track. They would play it a few times throughout their career, more famously in the 1977 concerts, where they resurrected that for some time. And potentially that would wrap it up. There was a release on the Queen 1 box set, See What a Fool I've Been, an embryonic version of that. However, See What a Fool I've Been officially was released as a B-side during the Queen 2 era, B-side of Seven Seas of Rye, and I know we're getting a Queen 2 box set, so I may save this version to revisit during that time, because it kind of sort of makes more sense to do it then, although I reserve the right to change my mind because it was released during this Queen 1 era. It's interesting to hear for sure, but I'm leaning towards saving it. The problem being is if the rumors are wrong, because there's no official announcement, Brian's talked about it, if we don't get the release, that means there's these hanging chat of a track out there that I never ended up covering. But I'm pretty confident it's going to come out. So I might, at the very least, hold on to it. And then if the box set doesn't come out, I can kind of have a really random, take a quick break in between albums and go, well, I'll throw this together now and give you to see what a fool I've been, revisit this era at that point. But we'll see. We'll see. Like I said before, if it's the first time, like that, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. Leave comments. Help me fight the evil algorithm out there. Al Gore's Rhythm, as my podcast partner for Holy Snoke says. There's other podcasts I do. If you listen to the regular PLD Projects Network on YouTube, we do have a bunch of podcasts there about movies and TV that I like. And you can join us at patreon.com/PLD Projects. We're going to do some early access to these Crown Jewels episodes. I usually record them about a week in advance, or at least like on that Sunday or Monday before it comes out on Friday. I get them up pretty much right away, so you'll have a whole week early when they are available. But I also do some other early versions of some other podcasts I do, and myself and PJ Campbell might be doing some bonus episodes of our movie podcast as well, if you're at all interested in that. But if you can't join us there, I understand completely. I fully get it. We do have a great crew there, Austin Cadell, Brendan Buckingham. But if you can help me even just by sharing or liking or doing all that kind of stuff, that does help out quite a bit on the algorithm. So I really do appreciate it. But that'll do it for this week, folks. We will see you next week for Jesus. And until then, I hope your son and daughter are doing fine, and mine are doing fine, and my other son as well, son and daughter and son, and yeah, so either way, God save the sweet, everybody.